So a few days ago, the first footage of Battlefield 6, which is apparently coming out before April 2026, was revealed. What can we tell from it? Well, not a terrific amount. There's a lot of explosions. The weapon animations seem to be the same as 2042. There seems to be no tactical sprint, but if you look further down the hall, there appears to be a crouch sprint like Battlefield 5. Surprisingly more explosions, which seem to knock the players about. Very nice destruction particle effects. This seems to be the recon class, which has very Bad Company 2 vibes, and it seems there's possibly some physics-based destruction, very Sen Crossing this, although maybe you'd expect that given how good destruction already is in the finals. I like the vibe, it feels very Strike at Car Candy, although apparently some leaks a few months back suggested that this map looks something like the end of Tenet. And it might actually be this map in the background here, maybe a sort of Mogadishu looking map, because there was a Black Hawk shown in the trailer as well. Also, according to the leak, one of the playtest maps was set in the Hollywood Hills, and it's Russians versus Americans, so maybe the Russians invade Los Angeles in the campaign. They've also started Battlefield Labs, which is like the community test environment from Battlefield 4. You can sign up for it now. It's incredibly popular. That guy was walking very slow when I looked on there. It's under NDA, but I'm sure somebody will leak some footage at some point. I don't know if this is going to be, too many cooks spoiling the broth. Because the map produced under the CTE, Operation Outbreak, 10 points if you remembered that was the name, because I didn't, isn't at least as memorable for me as some of DICE's homegrown maps like Arica Harbour, Siege of Shanghai, Dam of Van Peak, dare I say Operation Metro. Community feedback's always a bit of a question mark because player feedback is always skewed towards what that player likes. For example, if you like vehicles, you're probably going to want maps like Goldman Railway. Fortunately though, since 2042, the team's got a new lead now in Vince Zampella, who of course game directed Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, Titanfall, Apex Legends. I mean, he's possibly the best game developer in the industry right now. It is rather strange though that previous Battlefield games have had such terrible launches, because it's definitely not a talent issue. I suspect 2042's was because they were trying new tech with 128 players, which they couldn't quite get to work, and because everything just got pushed back by 30% because of COVID remote working. Like if you're a team leader and you can't walk past somebody's desk and check they're on track, the speed you can iterate is vastly reduced. And then of course, a week before launch, the company you've outsourced to sends you this.
Yeah, Angel does it again.
And you sat there thinking,
don't be sad. This is just how it works out sometimes.
It's not like they're deciding that at a team meeting. They're not like, hey Bob, what do you want? I want Angel to do it again. No, like it's just not, If Angel keeps doing it, somebody needs to tell him not to. They've combined DICE, Motive, Criterion and Ripple Effect into Battlefield Studios, which is obviously just a rebrand. All of those guys worked on 2042 and probably on some of the previous games. But it's very likely they need the manpower because the single player is confirmed, and I gather there's going to be a battle royale as well, which hopefully will be separate and free, or it's probably just going to die off like Firestorm did. Because Firestorm actually had incredible potential. Unlocking tanks from vaults, the storm destroying the buildings behind you so you literally had to run from it. I mean, it was a great idea, it was just behind a huge paywall. I don't know if you noticed, but the teaser had the Battlefield 3 music in it, and it was also released exactly 14 years after the Battlefield 3 teaser trailer. So after all this time, what actually makes a good Battlefield game? These are the most popular Battlefield games by sales, but the way they all play is significantly different, and obviously each game has technologically improved significantly from the previous. For example, my and most people's beloved Battlefield 3. It had no separate aim down sight sensitivity, no universal soldier aim, it had a 10 Hz tick rate, which was brutal as you died constantly at the same time as the person you were shooting. There was insane smudge suppression that sometimes felt like your bullets were going at right angles, and everything was blue and the sun was ridiculous. But despite all this, for some reason running around with an M4 was a heck of a lot of fun. Diving off Dam of Van Peak never really got old. And flying jets around the tower on Caspian border was endlessly enjoyable, with a real skill curve to the planes. In Battlefield 4 they fixed a lot of these technical issues. The smudge suppression was reduced. There was still no hit marker sound, but there were different sensitivity sliders and universal soldier aim was introduced. Most of the servers now ran at 60 Hz, and there was a test range, which by the way should just be in every Battlefield game. Of course, you had the commander role as well, which was a bit of an interesting one, given it was usually somebody sat on their mobile on the loo, dropping care packages. Anyway, Destruction went to the next level with Levolution, which really was a first in multiplayer gaming at that time.
You have the right to remain silent!
We do, that's why we don't talk about Battlefield Hardline. I actually didn't really mind it, I kind of liked the animals. Weird that's what I remember from the game, but I also remembered this crane and that you could take ammo off teammates, which for some reason was a massive deal for me. Battlefield 1 introduced insane sniping. The snipers also had a one-shot body shot sweet spot mechanic, which was sort of 50-50 frustrating depending on which side of it you're on. To balance the automatic guns against the majority of single shot and semi-automatic rifles, SMGs in particular were given a huge amount of spread. I mean, literally to the point where sometimes it was better to just hip fire. There was a very nice gas and gas mask mechanic, which might be coming back in Battlefield 6 given this guy's carrying a gas mask. Also, there were specialist pickups across the map, which were actually very satisfying and very fair since you were marked on the map when you used them. Takedowns were taken to the next level. Obviously, they've been in since Battlefield 3, but these ones were brutal. All the vehicles came with some very nice animations. Tanks were particularly strong to fit the time period. Almost as strong as the horses.
Right, we're going a bit faster, boys. We got this. Attack for Narnia.
The losing team got a behemoth at the end of the round, either a Zeppelin, a train, or a dreadnought. I mean, I thought they were a fantastic way of stopping the end of a round becoming a landslide, and they led to some very cinematic moments. In Battlefield 5, I don't know if it was the visual style, but at least for me it felt a bit more hardcore. It was also the first attempt to give soldiers personality in a rather modern way, which didn't go down too well with the core audience. They led their trailer with a claw-armed female soldier, which I would imagine was rather niche for the time.
Hello, old friend.
However, some nice movement mechanics were introduced, like rolling when you dived out of windows. You also got knocked about significantly by explosions. Fortifications were added, and you were able to drag turrets about with vehicles, which was very nice. Even though 90% of players don't try and tactically use any of that stuff, it's still a really nice sandbox mechanic.
Oh my god!
Gunplay to me always felt a bit weird, and there were significant visibility problems at the game's launch, especially regarding prone LMGs. Again, it was seemingly rushed out. There was a lot of cool stuff in the trailer that was never added. Surviving plane crashes, for example. It was also a weird choice not to go for bigger World War II events, at least some of them. They realised this at the end because they released Iwo Jima, probably the best map in the game, but it was the last map released. The first one where you felt truly immersed, at least for me. Notably, they switched to a modern Battle Pass model, Tides of War, for the first time in this game. It used to be a premium pass system where you had to pay for DLC maps, so hardly anybody played those maps and they died out. Battlefield 2042 was technically probably the worst launch in Battlefield history. Almost an unplayable game. We've had a few of those. With what it's got, it's actually pulled itself together quite well over the last 2 years. I genuinely enjoy the gunplay. Bullets hit where they should. There's no visual recoil. The guns are satisfying and feel powerful and different. I think the plus system adds a terrific amount. Switching scopes and ammo mid-life really keeps the mechanics interesting. It does of course remove some teamwork. With the plus system you can carry tons of magazines, and that's really the core problem with the game, teamwork. Controversially, 2042 switched to a hero shooter system at the start. I think there was influence from other hero shooters doing particularly well for Battlefield to similarly monetize their Battle Pass. I mean, you don't need Nicki Minaj running around for people to want to buy custom skins.
Playtime is over when Nikki drops in.
I mean, she's not wrong, but it's because nobody's playing Warzone. You know, like an old game like Medal of Honor Warfighter had tons of really nice operator skins. And I know this guy looked like a pineapple, but I really liked his ghillie suit. To be fair, a lot of the 2042 characters are memorable. Boris, Falk, Casper, and they're actually more memorable than previous games. I don't remember really any of the other characters since Bad Company 2, apart from Wrecker, and that's only because he didn't get left behind.
We are not gonna leave you behind. No one gets left behind. We're not leaving them. We need them. That's an order. Fuck you.
Something else that didn't get left behind was the previous games, as 2042 shipped with Portal, the promise you could build game modes from legacy games. It was a great idea, but it was seriously overpromised and underdeveloped. To be fair, 2042 did introduce some nice sandbox mechanics. A grappling hook, a wingsuit, vehicle airdrops. I mean, you could literally drive a hovercraft up a skyscraper at launch.
What?
It's quite obvious all the games have something special about them. So if you're Vince Zampella, how do you know what to do? Should you have the suppression of Battlefield 3, the spread mechanics of Battlefield 1, or the clinical feeling of 2042? Is it okay to have the Fliegerfaust fiasco of Battlefield 5, or dare I say it, the M26 Dart disaster of Battlefield 3? Did those things improve the game? They were definitely fun for a while. I suspect it's being very aware of what's just nostalgia, but also that immersion, fairness, and limiting frustration are critically important. Because the idea of games is you used to play them to relax, right? In Battlefield 3, there was an awful browser window server browser, but it gave you a notification if you were going to join a game with very few tickets left. That was removed, and I don't think it's ever been put back, so you might join 4 or 5 games in 2042, wasting 15 minutes before you can actually play. So you're frustrated before playing, which amplifies every frustration from that point. FPS games are a balance of rewards versus punishments. If you're killing 4 or 5 people every time you die, you're being punished significantly less than someone who's dying every time they kill somebody. How well you're doing does impact how much you enjoy the game, until something immersive happens, like Flood Zone gets flooded and suddenly you're swimming around in this abandoned city with infantry fighting vehicles floating past you. The punishments are less of a concern because you're in a battle. Goofy looking characters with cheesy voice lines remove immersion and are irritating, so amplify the punishments. It is why they should always try and keep a simple HUD in Battlefield games, and or have a toggle for full, minimal and off, because it does affect immersion. Squad play is really important because it reduces frustration. It lets you play the objective easier, which is satisfying because it moves the attention off pure kills, and it doesn't matter if you die a lot because you're getting picked up, so it's like, whatever. But the more the game is designed around squad play, the more frustrating bad teammates are. I mean, Battlefield players have literally been running around for 20 years now spamming "give me ammo", and the game's constantly fighting them because they keep removing the ability to take magazines off support players. Half the player base runs around like headless chickens. In 2042, the best random teammates are usually AI. They'll guarantee smoke and revive you. This AI's in the top 3. They'll always give you ammo, and they won't try and run off with the vehicle that you've just airdropped in. But who wants to shoot AI in a multiplayer, or worse, be distracted by it when there's a real player nearby? I'm sure there's something beneficial to be had with AI. I gather they're bringing back Portal 2.0 in Battlefield 6, so that might be a good place to test some configurations. Maybe, 5-man squads, 4 players, 1 AI with a bright blue UN helmet on or something, so you know it's AI. No gun, just carries ammo, meds, and revives, but maybe AI's not even up to that. Spotting. The Great Dorito Hunt needs some work in the next game. I mean, there is already a very good contextual ping system in 2042. You should probably also know when you're spotted. They've kind of got this in 2042 with Rao's location revealed message above the minimap. But if you're flanking and you don't know somebody's spotted you, it's another completely random thing out of your control that's going to make you frustrated. Like, any lack of knowledge is frustrating. It's why the balance of footstep sounds and things like that are really important. Fundamentally, name tags and Doritos should never display until part of your character appears from cover. With a few bullets to die, it makes a huge difference if someone's pre-aiming you. To be fair on Battlefield though, it's actually doing a lot right in 2042. It's one of the few games not infected by skill-based matchmaking, the biggest problem in modern gaming, and it actually balances cross-input pretty well compared to some other games. Skill-based matchmaking is designed to drive you to play through managing your frustration. It gives you a bit and takes away a lot, and most games have it really dialed in. In Warzone, almost every in-game action updates your SPMM stat. If you ask Activision for your personal data, you can see it updates every game. Within reason, you do want to match with people who are in a certain band of ability because part of the psychological enjoyment of winning comes from overcoming a challenge. There's a term for it, eudaimonia. It's what skill-based matchmaking preys on. Destroying the worst players in the world probably is fun for a little while, but it can't happen because some people are literally disabled playing the game and their enjoyment needs protecting. Joy comes from variety. Sometimes you want tough people to learn from, or you won't get better, and sometimes you don't. You don't want every game to be stressful. Really, you want to be playing a band of like 20-25% above and below your ability, and the bottom 20% just needs protecting. The precision with which Warzone implements SPMM is just awful, and really probably not very good for you either. Crossplay, on the other hand, is a potentially really good development, but the cross-input that comes with it isn't fair. Cross-input is like playing golf, but some people have a driver to a 5-iron and others have a 6-iron to a sand wedge. Golf wouldn't exist now if that was the way it was played. I mean, sure, you can putt with a driver and drive with a putter, but you're creating a level of frustration there that just doesn't need to exist.
Oh, God, I love it.
And it does change gameplay. If I'm playing Warzone on mouse and keyboard, I don't want to go in buildings because I know I'm at such a disadvantage to control a rotational aim assist at close range, which you literally can't compete with because on mouse and keyboard, when the enemy changes direction, there's an overshoot as you correct for that. Depending on how it's dialed in, rotational aim assist can do that for you. See, this looks clunky here, right? But this is actually the best in the world. For tracking game, this is as good as mouse and keyboard gets. On the other hand, if you're on controller, you probably don't want to take mid-range fights with mouse and keyboard because it's significantly easier to control recoil on that. Unfortunately in Battlefield, the sandbox nature of the gameplay means these things don't matter so much, but really, every modern game should have a toggle for crossplay and a toggle for cross-input so at least people have a choice. So, immersion, fairness, and limiting frustration. It's probably already what Vince Sampella's trying to achieve, or Apex Legends wouldn't have done so well. Nowadays, the standard is really high for FPS games. It's why so many die off so quickly. I mean, graphically, everything just looks like Unreal Engine. There may be a slight graphical increase with Battlefield 6, given it's not going to the older generation of consoles, but it's not going to be anything like from Battlefield 3 to Battlefield 4, where you were like, whoa, my GTX 580 is not going to take that. It's going to start a house fire, you know. I've got to save up and SLI some 690s, which probably would have definitely caused a house fire. But, you know, that time's gone, and the focus on that, which probably let lower quality gameplay get away with being lower quality gameplay, has also gone. But it always felt like you were playing something new and fresh with those games. I suspect the April 2026 release date for Battlefield 6 is realistic, given they're probably trying to wait out GTA 6, but I'd also imagine there'll be a beta at some point before Christmas, given what's happening with labs. You know, in the end, Vince Zampella, Battlefield Studios, they don't need to worry. There's always a plan B. If everything goes to pot, they can just release Bad Company 2 with ray tracing as Bad Company 2.5. I'm sure people would love that. I hope you enjoyed these thoughts, and I will catch you in the next one.
Grenade out!